Welcome, my friends, to Inside the Minds of Authors. I'm DC Gomez, and I'm thrilled you're joining me today for a fun conversation with a passionate author. We're kicking off the program, like it's our tradition, with a short reading from the feature book. I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get started.
Hi, my name is Gume, and I'm here today to talk about my book, Sansom and Domingo, published by West 44 Books, an imprint of Rosin Publishing. Samson's hair is too pretty for a jock's head. Equal parts dark cocoa and milky smooth. Runs longer than any high school math class. I have no clue how he fits it all into his football helmet for Friday night lights. Samson Montaña and Domingo Paloma. We are the definition of star-crossed lovers. Pop versus indie. Meathead versus band geek. Attending rival high schools in the same city widens the divide, but it doesn't keep us from texting each other around the clock. Waltzing into the living room. I wear a lavender-fitted polo. Warm rosewood cologne on my collar. It trails into the air around me like butterflies. My older brother, Pablo, sits on the couch. I plop down beside him, lace up my black Converse. Again, Domingo? You're going somewhere with man bun? Pablo scrolls on his phone. Y qué? I say, so what? He's my football team's arch nemesis. Westlake South's entire football team against one 11th grade quarterback, I say. You know how good he is, Domingo. He's the star player of Westlake North's high team. They're nothing without him. And you'll be considered a traitor to Westlake South High if you don't stop spending time with him. Samson's bright yellow Mustang is parked on the curb outside of my house. Samson stands beside it. His linen button down drapes over his firm frame, like curtains in the breeze. Atop Samson's head, his crazy long black hair, wrapped in a messy bun. In his hands is a bunch of flowers, white stargazers and fresh eucalyptus, wrapped in crinkly paper. Before he hands them to me, Samson gives me a kiss. It lasts for only a second, but feels like the length of time between the Big Bang and today. Samson's solid brown arms wrap me in a hug. I feel safe.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Inside the Minds of Authors. I am so excited you guys are joining us for a brand new season. We have amazing authors already. So we have some returning guests. We have some dear friends joining us, and it's going to be an amazing time. I am so excited you guys have enjoyed this entire week of really fabulous authors. So we're back to our regular schedule here Monday nights, and I can't wait to get started. Just quick note, if you're new to the podcast and you're catching us now, make sure to subscribe, give us some love, share this. If you're interested in reviewing, we'll take a review. We need all the help we can get to continue to spread the word of amazing authors. But you guys are here to talk to our fabulous guests, so we're going to get started. Hi, dear. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you, DC?
I am fabulous. It's been years that I've been going, why are you not on the podcast? What is going on?
It has been a while. An entire pandemic even.
Oh my God. No, I was like, okay, this is going to happen. When it's meant to be, it's going to happen. So I am so happy you're here. By the way, congratulations on the book.
Thank
How
you
does
so
it
much.
feel?
It feels very relieving that it's finally, because at this point that we're recording, it's 13 days away, 12 days away from publication. And so I'm in like that last couple of weeks of just really pushing pre-orders and downloads on NetGalley and just really getting it out there every day, coming up with like 3 or 4 different memes to post on the social media to get it some traction for the book. So I'm really excited. I'm really looking forward to when it releases on the 1st of February.
So for everybody listening, it is the 12th of February today. So you guys have brand new book within 30 days. So you guys do need to go ahead and pick it up. So let's dive into this book. I need to know, where did this story come from? What made you decide to write it? And what genre is this? Tell us.
So it's actually funny because I never intended to write this story. It was a couple summers ago for my regular day job. I ever like mention what it is, but I have like a regular day job that is a lot of hours. And so I will get 2 weeks out of the year off. One in the wintertime, one in the summertime. That's usually when I go back to visit my family down on the border in the Rio Grande Valley, deep South Texas. A couple summers ago, I was going down there and I had the idea that I was going to write a specific story while I was down there. And on the drive down, I couldn't come up with any ideas to expand on it because it's a story I had started and then I just never moved forward with it and beyond the first like 10,000 words or so. And then this other story, though, the idea of Samson and Domingo kept like just popping up in my head. And on my drive down there, because I'm the kind of person who will hear a song and then just listen to it over and over, I will kill the song just because like I become so obsessed with it. And so I was listening to it wasn't even anyone at the time even Lord's song called Supercut, which I think it's several years old now. But just like hearing the lyrics of it as I was driving, the lyrics are in your car, the radio on. We keep trying to talk about us. I'm someone you're maybe my love. And this other part in the bridge where it's in my head, I do everything right. Just hearing that on repeat over and over again as I was driving. And I just imagined what that could look like with these characters that were also popping up in my head at the same time. Samson being the football player, Domingo being the marching band kid, and how that could, be the retelling of Samson and Delilah. It's funny because I don't ever think about it until I guess now that I'm talking about it. I am a lot more influenced by music than I realize. It's really old at this point, but the song called Samson by Regina Spektor, I don't know if you've ever heard it. So she takes the story of it's from the 2000s. She takes the story of Samson and Delilah, but makes it from Delilah's point of view and turns it into a love story. And instead of it being known as kind of being misogynistic and a lot of other not good things, it just changed the idea of what that story could be like, for like a different perspective of it. And that had always stuck with me. And then thinking like, how could that look like as a queer retelling? Okay, that would be neat. And then it's like, as I was driving, I'm driving down to, like I said, the valley to my parents' place. When I was a kid, I was in band. So I left pretty quickly after high school, so all of my memories there are in my hometown are up to high school age. So like what high school was like for me, being in marching band, always being at the football games, always at pep rallies, always doing stuff at school. All of these different influences kind of culminating into one drive, 4-hour drive down to visit my family for a week. And then while I was there, like I said, that other story that I had planned to write, I sat down and it was just not coming out. Like nothing I did. So like, you know what? Let me just write bullet points for this other story. What would this look like? So I was coming up with it as was happening. Going to the other question you had, what genre is it? It's actually a verse novel. For people who don't know, verse novels are actually kind of like the whole story goes through poems. And so every page is like a little poem, but it's taking you through the story. And so the way that I originally put the Samson and Domingo story down was as bullet points, which were almost like poems. And then I eventually went back and made the full story of it. So that's how it came to be. It was just a perfect storm situation.
The perfect storm that you navigated very, very well. And you gave permission to yourself to be like, okay, this one's not coming. It's going to be okay. Let me try something else. Have you always been that flexible with yourself?
I've tried to be in the last few years. I know before I wasn't. I was always very much the kind of person who's like has to go through story A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and like I can't move on to another project until I've completed that one. I feel in the last years I've really allowed myself to just not do that because I feel like when you hit the wall, you just keep hitting the wall and you're not going to produce anything that beyond a bunch of bricks and nobody's going to enjoy that. Nothing soft, like which, I think writing needs to be soft and tender. And if you're just building a wall, nobody's going to enjoy that.
That is such a beautiful way to put it because sometimes we think we're just going to push through it. And you're right. The only thing you have is breaks and a broken head. Let's be honest. Like nothing good happens out of that. I want to talk a little bit about a verse novel because I was not familiar with it until you introduced me to it. I'm like, what? How does this work? How did that process work for you to create this book this way? Or is that something that comes natural?
I think for me, because I do young adult and then I also do poetry, and I had never merged those two worlds together because verse novels are technically considered poetry. I think it's one of those genres where people will identify it as different. Like it technically can be young adult and it can technically also be poetry. It's like all these things mix, and it's not even a new genre. It's been around forever. But the way that I was able to come up with it, like I said, for this one, more practical sense, this being my first verse novel, because I wanted to write one for years and I've read so many of them. I've asked different people who have written verse novels. And it's funny because the more verse novels you read, the more you realize there's no structure to follow. Or with regular like young adult novels, you'll always have a chapter, and the chapter will always have paragraphs, and then there will always be a following chapter, and that chapter will, as to where verse novels, some of them each page is just one sentence. Some of them are bigger, blockier ones. Some of them are tiny. There's just no set structure. It really just is how the story can flow and allowing it to move. I don't want to say like a short story because it's not like a short story, but it's also not like a in-depth story. This one actually, the first version of Samson and Domingo was double the length it is at current. The publisher I work with, like with verse novels, in addition to only specifically publishing verse novels, they publish the verse novels that are considered high-low, which means high interest, low readability. So people that are teens and adults, but have, for whatever reason, have a lower reading level ability, they're able to digest it. So for the Samson and Domingo, the reading level is actually between grade 2 and 3, but anybody who sees anything having to do with it, it's with high school students, and it's upper teens and adults. Part of that is not just how big the words are in the story. It also includes how many words are on every page, how many pages are in the book. And so originally it was 20,000 words. For them, the maximum, or where the number there have to be, is 10,000 words in the book. So I also had to gut a lot of the story in the process of getting it to the specs that the publisher wants, and not even where it's like I had to give up the story, nothing at all like that. Where it's like I had to make it accessible in in an even greater way for more readers who don't always have books accessible to them.
I should say, like, I'm getting ready to cry. I'm like, that is such a beautiful thing to do because books should be made accessible to everyone. So this is beautiful.
Yeah, and I love it because it's so interesting. So the way that in high low, the standard kind of like description is it's for reluctant readers. And so then unpacking what does that mean? Like reluctant people who don't like to read, but also if they're just beginning to learn the English language. I know that not everybody has, including me, because I know I was there, don't always have access to the best educators. Like I had some amazing teachers. I also had some that were not. And so that, to the detriment of people's ability to, learning ability and readability, their ability to read and their ability to enjoy reading. Something too, one of the readers who read Samson and Domingo, she reached out to me and she mentioned how she has ADHD. And so it's hard for her a lot of the time to just sit and focus on all the big novels that everybody is like really into and stuff. And so a story like this being short, it's very brief, like little paragraphs, little phrases on every page. So it makes it easier to get through without feeling overwhelmed.
It's a great novel for anybody who English is a second language. I grew up in Dominican Republic, so picking up English as a young preteen is something that most people don't understand how difficult the English language can be. It is one of the hardest things. I'm like, who came up with this and why? So I love the concept of introducing this world to other people in an easy to digest form. I'm also pretty impressed that you cut half of the story out and didn't lose the story.
When you make something smaller, the heart of the story was still there. I didn't expand into other things because, like, when you edit, you realize a story can still hold itself without all of these other add-ons. So, for example, how they go to different rival high schools within the same city. one high school being in the more affluent side, one in the less affluent side. So then, like, how would that play into the story? All these other in the family settings, how that would affect all these different things. So where the story can still exist without all of those add-ons and bring even more focus and attention to them as the main characters.
It's a good way to make sure you tunnel vision into what the story is without going down rabbit holes because you only have
Exactly.
10,000 words to play with.
Exactly.
Creating this book and the fact that you tackle a whole different genre for you. What was the most interesting thing about it?
I think the most interesting thing is tying it back to it being high-low, how much I take for granted. It really made me step outside of myself. So, for example, I just read it a second ago where Samson is standing outside by his car and he has the flowers with him. Originally, I wrote that Samson is standing outside his car. He has a bouquet of flowers. And the notes from the editor was like, this is too big a word. And I realized, you know what, that's true. Like it's just it really made me step out of myself, like just how inaccessible sometimes books can be. A bunch of flowers, changed a bouquet to a bunch. And it's something simple, like one word can make a difference in somebody being able to enjoy a book and then not be able to enjoy the book. And so for me, that was really impacting in writing this book is learning how, because that's always been a really big thing. I feel like I was on a panel with you at one point. I brought this up. I think it was you. I brought it up how I feel like a lot of the time the book community can be very exclusive and it's not inclusive at all. And I think that there's reason for that. Like people feel outcasted in other circles. So they come into the readers community and they feel whole and they want to protect it. So I get that. But a lot of the time that can just push out so many people. And I feel books and the reading community should be welcome everybody with open arms. Like find the book, what you like to read, what you enjoy, a story that you want to be told.
I love it. I love the fact that you have been able to be so introspective about it and be able to look at the fact that you mentioned it. I was like, you have a point. Okay. Can be definitely one of those words of like too high, depending on who your target demographic. It is also shows how well of a storyteller you are because I had not noticed that the reading level should have been lower because the story's still so engaging. I was like, oh, if you have not pointed this out, I was like, did not even realize that. So that says a lot about the whole storytelling aspect of it that is still there.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's interesting because if you look at it on more technical, I feel like it shows most in the technical lens. Like if you look at all the sentences are kind of short, so how as to where there's a lot of similes, and so where the simile would it be comma like this is period, then like it's two separate sentences. So all even the sentences are broken down into smaller. That was part of the of learning how to write in this format is breaking it down, even the sentences short and like phrases.
Everything about this is very strategic and intentional. Like there's nothing that happened here by accident. This is how this is going to be formatted. So I absolutely love it. Switching a little gears because you write in other genres. Tell me a little bit more about your other works. What have you been working on?
I previously had done self-published books. Those are still out. I also have a poetry book that's coming out. Again, like I said, I wear the young adult hat and I wear the poetry hat. Poetry book coming out in the spring of this year. It's called Assimilated Natives. And it's a collection of borderland poetry from Deep South Texas, where it explores the concept of those of us who are multi-generation American from regions that are still very much infused by our ancestral heritage. So, for example, those of us that were originally from the border, Mexican border, so heavily influenced by Mexican culture, to where it's funny because I remember all of the Mexican holidays more than I do the American holidays growing up. Like, I don't remember ever celebrating. Again, I know that there was stuff for 4th of July. I know that that happened, but we didn't have parades and stuff, but we had parades for this said Mexican Independence Day. And like we had parades for all that stuff, but I don't remember having to the level that we did the American holidays, even though we were in America. So for anybody who lives in the border of any kind of border, whether it's from state to state, country to another country, you know that it's a blending of two cultures. And so the poetry is about that and realizing for those of us who are multi-generation American, how specifically on the southern border, how every generation has been forced to assimilate more and more. into an American culture, not even by choice, but literally by force. And so examining how that disconnect from our heritage happens. So, for example, a lot of us from my generation, we weren't taught how to speak Spanish growing up because our parents' generation would be punished for speaking Spanish in public places, like in schools, and they'd get kicked out of school and stuff. And then like our grandparents' generation were primarily Spanish. So like there's a lot of people when I was growing up, people that when I'd be like 5, 6 years old, people that were in their 40s, 50s, my direct family members, but we spoke two different languages and couldn't communicate. And so how that disruption in culture and in heritage. So that's the Assimilated Natives. That one's published by Mouthfeel Press. And then I do have a second one coming from the same publisher, this from West 44 Books. I can't talk too much about it because I haven't publicly announced it yet, but it is another high-low first novel, another young adult with a bunch of queer Chicano characters, queer Latin characters, but this one's going to be paranormal. And so a lot of brujeria, a lot of magic.
I'm an urban fantasy nerd. So the fact that you are, I was like, ooh, this is going to be so much fun. How do you switch gears between poetry and novels? Like, how do you decide, okay, I need a break from this, or do you ever take a break?
I think that because my brain will work very much, not tunnel vision at all, definitely not tunnel vision, but it's if I'm facing one direction, this is what I'm doing. If I turn my head and face another direction, it's going this way. So, for example, like right now, I'm very much more in poetry mode, and I've been trying to get back into edit some older work that has been shelved for a while. That's more like novel length work, and so I noticed if I try to write that when my brain is more poetry mode, it comes out a little bit too not flowery, but a little bit flowery prose and a little bit too like flowy versus the novel type style. So it really is just whatever my brain is wanting to do. I'm also the kind of person who has to always be doing. And so it just like I literally will wake up and see like what my brain is letting me do today or what it's not letting me do.
No, it's not. That's
Which
such a beautiful way of looking at it. That's like, okay, we're just going to switch gears and just play with it. You go very well with the flow from one thing to others. I'm so glad that you mentioned your upcoming projects, which is really exciting. Question to you is, do you work on a deadline or is it whenever it gets done, it got done? Like, how does that work?
So it depends. So for example, like the high-low verse novel with Samson and Domingo and the other one, those ones are on deadlines. Like I'm on contract to have them done by certain points by certain times. And so I have to get that done, which I do better with. I've come to learn I do better with not because like I'll wait till the last second to do it. If there's a day where I've done absolutely nothing, those are very much welcome. But if there's too many days when I've done absolutely nothing and they're starting to add up, then it's okay. How is this going to be? How am I going to be affected by this in a month or two when I need to send in the next however many thousands of words? So that poetry, though, so that, but then like the poetry, I feel like poetry is so different because with poems, I can write a poem and it'll sit in my drafts for forever until I have a place for it. So there's some poems I wrote several years prior and I didn't have anything for them until like this coming collection. Or there's some that are even older that don't have a place yet. Because I feel like poems are you write a bunch of stuff and then eventually it goes into something. It feeds into a collection somewhere that it'll fit perfectly for it.
It is so much fun to just watch your mind process and going, how do I do this? Because I'm like, every once in a while, as an author thing we take for granted that there is a process in ourselves. We just kind of don't acknowledge that we have it. So I'm so excited. And you have amazing things for 2024. So I'm looking forward to it. Question for you: when it comes to your success, do you have a definition of it? And how will you look at it for the future?
I think that it's in steps for me. And I think it would be in steps for everybody because I think if like, oh, this is success is like they see the end game of what they would want to do as to where at this season in my life, what does success look like to me? And for me, success in this season looks like people reacting positively to the book I am publishing. I'm getting good feedback on Samson and Domingo. People are saying like, it healed them. Like that's one of the biggest things for me with art because when I was growing up, I really liked multimedia. Like I wanted to go into film industry when I was in school, and I wanted to do different things. And so I've always been like a storyteller and creating art. And for me, like the heart of that needs to be that it is healing to people in whatever way that looks like for the individual. It's been really nice because the Sansom and Domingo, it's being reviewed by a bunch of different people, like went through NetGalley and other places. And so dozens of people have read it already and like shared about it. So people saying that it's healed them because for a lot of queer people who grew up in Texas, because the story is very much queer. It's just very queer. And it's also very Texas. They're at Whataburger after the football game on Friday night. The thing is, something I purposely left out in the story is that no matter how Texan it is, there is absolutely no degree of homophobia or degree of there any of the queer people not feeling accepted. And it's the opposite. So for example, like you see Domingo's family comes out a lot, like his parents, and they're super embracing of him meeting Samson, and it's never a thing. Like them being gay is never a thing in the story with their schoolmates or anything at all. And so people see that and they're like, it's healing to them because they didn't get that wasn't the childhood that they got the opposite of that, whether it was in their home, whether it was at school, not being able to find somebody they could be out and normal with, something hetero couples don't really ever have to think about. One thing I heard a while back is like, have you ever had to think about holding your partner's hand in a public place, or do you just do it? For queer people, they can't just do it. But in this story, they can. It brings healing to that. Even a couple people mentioned how they were brought up in church. They didn't have the best experiences growing up in church because of whatever reasons. And so then being able to see the Samson and Delilah story retold as a queer story, just happy and peaceful, that was also healing for them. That healed some traumas that they had. So to me, success is hearing people be able to say that they feel a sense of healing in the story.
A sense of healing and a sense of understanding. Like I have been seen and I'm a
Yes.
person. I'm not just a target. So I'm like, oh my God. I was not expecting to be emotional today, honey. That was not the goal for this podcast. I also realized we can chat for hours. So I got a couple more questions before you got to bounce out. What advice would you give an up and coming author? What would you tell them?
Read a lot, because I think that's something that writers tend to not do, and they use the excuse of, "Oh, it's because I'm busy writing." And it's like, no, you need to read. Like, is so beneficial for your craft and developing your own craft, and write, which sounds dumb because it's like, well, duh, but it's funny because writers tend to not read and they tend to not write. And it's so ironic, but it's the reality is it's the daydreaming of writing, or it's coming up with ideas of what the story would be, and it's never actually writing. There's all so much that does go into the story, like taking notes and maybe drawing character drawings or settings or whatever. That's good, that's amazing, that's great exercise, but the actual act of writing is where it's at, and that's what really needs to be done.
I think you said it so well. Most writers tend to talk a lot about writing and they dream about writing. I joke with people, everybody has their like Oscar speech they're gonna say when they win the Oscar for this book. I'm like, have you finished the book? It's like, no, but this is gonna be life-changing. I'm like, you should write the book. Don't worry about the speech. How about you write the book? So you nailed this so well. So yes, write guys. It's okay to write. And it doesn't have to be perfect, just write. So dear, where can our listeners find you? Where they can learn more about this book, about your adventures, everything.
So I'm most active on Instagram. It's at tx.author. I've been holding on to that handle for so long and waiting for somebody to buy it from. The only time I'll ever change it is somebody wants to buy it off of me. So if you're out there listening, no, I'm joking. Yeah, so I kind of am on TikTok, but not really. I've been trying to do the TikTok thing. I love TikTok for my own like personal self. Like I will spend 12 hours on there. But as far as like marketing and everything like that, I exist on TikTok, but I'm not as active as I am saying like on Instagram, to where I feel like it's very my Bookstagram family is all within reach, wherever very encouraging and very fun on there. So yeah, Instagram is where I would say TX author. My website is Gume Laurel, GUMELAUREL.com.
You guys have multiple places you can find him and get more information, connect, add questions. And most important, just send a message if you enjoy the book. Let him know. So, dear, are you ready for the lightning round?
Let's do it.
Easy peasy. Don't think too much about this. Let's go. Coffee or tea?
See, you can't tell me to not think about. I'm a Libra. I'm gonna pull the Libra card because I'm like coffee's great in the morning, but tea is also great in the afternoon. I'm just gonna say coffee.
Such a Libra move. Oh my God.
I take
Okay.
it back. Tea.
See, totally. Fruit or veggies?
See, like again, I'm like, well, vegetable. Too many like tunnels in my brain. I'm gonna just say fruits.
Okay. Superhero or villain?
Superhero.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
So here's a little different. Let's see how you do with this one. If your life had a warning label, what would it be?
Flammable.
Well, I want to know why.
Because I'm like, very chill. Like I can sit and be fine in the room, but if you put me in the wrong environment, I'll probably explode. So there's
And like,
that.
didn't take you long to realize this, so I'm enjoying this. So, dear, do you have any closing remarks for us?
What I would say is, even if this isn't a book that maybe doesn't appeal to you, maybe you're more so into like longer novels or thicker stories. If there's anybody that like in your life that would benefit from a book like a high-low verse novel, I ask that you be inclusive and help bring them into a place where they feel safe enough to be able to read stories by providing a story like this to them.
Oh, I love it. To our listeners, go ahead and check out Mr. Gume's book. Check out his website. Go follow him on Instagram. You actually will enjoy everything he posts because I'm there. So take a look at him. We'll be back next week, back to our regular schedules. I'm looking forward to. Make sure to join. We have amazing authors all year long. Give us a note and send us a comment. Let me know what you guys think and make sure to follow. I'll see you guys on Monday. Bye, everyone.